Over the weekend, the Los Angeles Times published a piece entitled "Killings in the U.S. Are Dropping at a Historic Rate. Will anyone notice?" Well, we've noticed. Local news, right-wing outlets.
Oh, the Floyd effect is wearing off.
Yeah. Right? They addressed that in this. I mean, like, all of these people who have decided that it's lucrative for them to really lean into the crime thing, whether they make it their entire YouTube channel, like that guy who was the sidekick at the Tim Pool debate that I did, or
the actual justice warrior.
Yeah, okay, yes, sorry, actual justice warrior. Whether they'll acknowledge that, I mean, this article here, killings in the U.S. are dropping at a historical rate. Will anyone know this? This should blow a hole in the entire premise of like the past 12, 16 months that some of these people have branded themselves on. But will they even report on this story? Probably not. It's a great piece. I'm going to read parts of it to you. Homicides in the U.S. dropped significantly in 2022 and have plummeted even faster this year, putting the country on track for one of the biggest declines in killing ever recorded, crime statistics show. Crime did rise Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you continue with it before I make my observation about what might lead to something like that. Maybe a huge spike right before it.
Here we go. Crime did rise nationwide in 2020 and 2021. The disruption caused by a deadly pandemic, which I think, affected people's brains a little bit, and we're still dealing with some of that fallout. There will be books written about what COVID did to a lot of even you can even draw a line to like Putin's isolation on his yacht and what's happening in Ukraine based on the pandemic. But putting that aside for now. The disruption caused by a deadly pandemic, a record increase in the availability of guns, a pullback of policing in some cities, and perhaps other factors contributed to combined to create a surge in homicides and other crimes. That national tide has started to recede, but public perception has not kept pace. Let's start with the numbers. The FBI's annual report on the nation's crime statistics shows a 6% decline in homicides in 2022. The drop exceeded what most crime experts expected, said Jeff Asher, a crime data analyst and consultant whose Datalytics site is a widely cited source of information. The FBI data, which the Bureau compiled from reports filed by 18,888 local police departments, lags nearly a year behind reality. Asher, who puts together data from departments that cover a large majority of the nation's population, says that so far this year, homicides nationwide have declined 11% to 12%. Cities tend to report first and have larger drops in more rural areas, Asher noted. So he's projecting the final nationwide 2023 numbers will show a similar drop somewhere between 7 and 10%. A 10% decline would be the largest ever recorded, he said. The largest ever recorded. But we're in the midst of a crime wave in this country if you watch half the news channels in this country. The decline goes beyond homicides. Violent crime overall ticked down in 2022 across the country, the FBI numbers showed, returning the U.S. pretty much to the levels of 2019 before the COVID-19 era increase. That's consistent with the pattern of the last dozen years. Despite some fluctuations, violent crime nationwide has stayed largely at the same level since 2011, when it hit a plateau after 20 years of steady declines. That doesn't mean all categories of crime have declined. Auto thefts, for example, have soared in many parts of the country, in part because of a wave of social media videos publicizing easy ways to steal Kia and Hyundai cars. But the concept of violent crime, this is a quote from that guy Asher, the concept of a violent crime wave, it just really doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, and to the extent there's like a Floyd effect, for instance, like in people's minds, something has changed and it's leading to different experiences with regards to crime. It is in the minds of our police force. And I think they have been throwing a tantrum basically, not even pre-George Floyd, since the entire like BLM movement has emerged. I think when you hear about like certain people being harassed and like there's no cops and even showing like sort of dangerous behavior and cops don't show up, it's not because the budgets have been trimmed. It's because the cops are like, fine, we get to decide when we get to that, and we're gonna let that be a problem for a little bit longer because our feelings are hurt because we're not allowed to kill with as much impunity, with slightly less impunity than we were allowed to kill with before.
Well, to those cops, I will say facts don't care about your feelings. The crime narrative relies on anecdotes, and this piece continues to flesh that point out. The power of the anecdote explains much of it. In contrast, in a country of nearly 340 million people, some crime takes place every hour, every day. Those incidents stick in people's minds, especially when the details are grisly. Vivid stories have far more power than dry numbers to shape how people view their world. And in the social media era, crimes anywhere can be just a click away. Anecdotes have even greater impact when they're fresh and crime statistics are not. Unlike economic statistics, which arrive monthly in real time, the U.S. system for reporting crime data, first set up in the 1930s, remains antiquated and slow. By the time the government reports the data, it's often too old to inform national debates. The localized nature of most crime plays a role too. In any year, whatever the national trend, some city probably will have an uptick in crime, often without a clear cause. They give some examples there. But that is undoubtedly true. We get the data on crime for the previous year, and it takes months and months for us to get that full picture. And when it does happen, honestly, people compartmentalize it because their brains have moved on to the next scary thing that they see on local news. So the reality is that violent crime in general, has been on a steady decline for decades at this point. There has been a bit of a plateau in recent years, as has mentioned, but the spike in 2020 and 2021, there are obvious causes for that. And they all lead back, really, to the pandemic and the fear and the anxiety and the economic desperation that mass disruption caused. And it's not about liberal attorneys general. It's not about district attorneys and law enforcement being too scared to do their jobs. No, this is an immensely explainable phenomenon based on the intense circumstances that we all went through in the middle of COVID, and poor communities felt way more acutely, where there was death all over the place, and there were people who were essentially sociopathic saying, get back to work, get back to work, get back to work, and we're going to provide you with the most threadbare assistance possible.
And that's if you're in the formal economy.
Exactly.
Which is, guess what? If you're wealthier and have a higher income, there's more likely that you're in that formal economy as opposed to poorer people who... I mean, I can't get over, like, when the first week those checks were going out, some guy I heard outside my window just on the street talking about, like, I'm not signed up for any of that. I'm not going to see it. Yeah.
If you're not in the formal economy, you're gonna go to crime.
What else are you gonna do?
Many
pay
people,
rent?
Right? Exactly. It's so simple to understand, but
we need to make the essentials decommodified. So, like, yeah, people aren't forced into this choice, which we want to force into this choice because it's good for the people selling the commodities.
Exactly. And then there are rubes in the media who have decided to cave to the pathologizing of entire groups of people, often poor, in order to make some case, I'm not exactly sure what it is, that liberals are wrong or that we're soft or leftists are unrealistic or bad on elections. I mean, who the hell knows? But at least from what our job is here, it's to educate people about the realities. And I will read that headline once again. Killings in the U.S. are dropping at a historic rate. Will anyone notice? Hopefully you guys do at this point.